What we're going to be talking about today just brings tears to my eyes. Uh, Looking at this material and studying for this one, it really upset me. Really upset me. Mhm. One for your missus. I was going to say, yeah. Long walk. There are people who look at world events and listen to our comments about world events, and they'll say such things as, "Oh, here we go again. We're talking about the end times again. I thought that died out with the 70s." No. Um, it is true. There have been many predictions about the return of Christ, and many of them have been wrong. And in the minds of some, that has given the whole subject of Bible prophecy in the end times a bad rap. But it was Jesus who said, "No man knows the day nor the hour of his return." We have to always be prepared for his coming. And the Bible tells us that when that day happens, it will be as a thief in the night. It's when you least expect it. People are saying peace and safety, and then suddenly destruction will come upon them like birth pangs, the Bible says. So let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. We are to live with the return of Christ in our minds, on our minds. That doesn't mean that we're to become an extremist and sell everything we have, put on a white robe, find the highest mountain, and wait on the top of the mountain until the Lord returns. You might get cold and you might get hungry. What it does mean is that we live life today with one eye peeled on eternity. We live life today with our focus on the future. Because life today is not just living, it's working. You know, the old hymn writer said, "Work, for the night is coming." And there won't be an opportunity after that. What is the work that we're supposed to be doing? Sharing the gospel. All of us. But because predicted events do cast their shadow before they arrive many times, it will be good for us to stop and to think, what is it that we're seeing happening today that gives us any insight into the future? Do we see the stage being set for the global takeover by the Antichrist? Oh, absolutely. Yes, everything is global, global, global. It really began to be popular back in the days of the first George Bush. You know, a new world order that he talked about. What kind of things do we see? Revelation 13, verses 7 and 8, says, "Authority was given to the beast over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship it. And everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain." So what happens to those who are around at that time who refuse to worship the beast? Well, one possibility is that you'll be killed with a sword. The Bible talks about that. And if not killed, you will be starved out of your home. Chapter 13 goes on in verses 16 and 17. "And it, the second beast, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be marked on the right hand of the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name." What is this mark? I don't know. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's something that's going to, without a doubt, identify. And it takes many, many different twists and turns by way of example. I remember as a boy, my grandmother being all upset because she got a gold-plated, it was just colored, it wasn't really gold, but it was a gold-colored little plate thing, business card size, Social Security card in the mail. And she began to tell me how that it was, this was how, they're going to keep track of us, and all this kind of thing, and everything's going to be tied to that number. And then fast forward, a couple of weeks ago, I saw something about some guy that had something as big as a aspirin pill that you swallow. And what it was some kind of a biometric gizmo that not only is an internal camera that takes pictures of everything you got going on in the inside, but it also releases something into your system so that ultimately your physical body is your biometric database. And you can always be found. Now, it used to be, when, we worried about, when they began to, could you get me a bottle of water? Whew, I'm just ready to pass out here. It used to be we were concerned about when they were beginning to chip animals, right? That's what they're going to do to us. They're going to chip us. They're just going to chip us. And there was a push for a while to get your kids chipped. That way if they, ever get stolen or whatever, well, all sure, but as gross as it sounds, you can cut that chip out, leave a nasty scar or whatever. But with this new thing, it infiltrates your DNA somehow, so that your entire body now is, thank you very much, is a tracking device. You can't get away from it. You drive in your car through an underpass that has tollway, things like an iPass or something like that, and it not only scan your toll thing, but it scan you. So they know where you are. You walk into a department store, and they know where you are. Oh, yeah. Your cell phone. Let's face it. Who goes anywhere without it? Your cell phone tied into your Apple Watch. They know everything about you. So we look at all this stuff. Call it the New World Order. Call it the Green New Deal. Call it the Great COVID-19 Reset. Call it the Fourth Industrial Revolution, whatever. We're talking about a world that is going to be and is being controlled from the top down with a single government, with a unified banking system, with one global ruler. Let's talk about this whole thing with COVID-19. That was the greatest thing that ever happened to those who are pushing this agenda. We can speculate till the cows come home as far as whether it was done accidentally on purpose, whether it was, not a surprise, and on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's over and done with. It's happened. And here we are in the aftermath of these types of things. It triggered an avalanche of global proportions with respect to this whole idea of global control. It has been used as a pretext for worldwide globalization and for an economic reset. We get through one, and then there's another variant that comes around, and then another variant that comes around, and all of these things we're given all kinds of different rationales for resetting the economic, geopolitical, environmental, racial equilibrium of the world. COVID-19 has proven that it is indeed possible for all of us to be connected as one family, one big global community. It's proven that. 2021, the World Health Organization put out a report evaluating the response of the world to COVID and providing recommendations. And in addition to all kinds of restrictions and mandates, the reports supported the creation of an international pandemic treaty that would establish consequences if countries failed to live up to their commitments. So this does away with national sovereignty. Because if you sign on to any kind of a global treaty, you're giving up your sovereignty in that area. We find ourselves wondering, will we ever get back to the good old days? Will we ever get back to normal? I hate to tell you, normal is dead. This is the new normal. I don't like it. I didn't like it after 9/11 hit. I was so upset with all of the rules and everything that came out. It still upsets me every time I go through an airport. And I have to take off half of what I'm wearing and put it in a box and watch it go through a machine and stand there and have some guy scan and this and that and hope he doesn't want to get friendly. And in the back of my mind, I'm saying to myself, and there's some terrorist on the other side of the world that's laughing hysterically at all of us. We will continue to be surprised by the rapidity and the unexpected nature of all of these changes. What's it going to look like? It again is getting rid of individual nations. No longer will countries set policies good for themselves they're going to set policies that are good for the whole world that they have to sign on to. And that means a lot of things are going to change. That means that you won't see presidents and heads of states going to G7, G8, G12 summits because there won't be any Gs. You know, when it comes to the top economic, 8, 10, 12 countries that meet and decide things. Because if this is true, then that means there's going to be a huge transfer of wealth, particularly from the United States, to all kinds of poorer countries in the interest of equality. There is no hiding this agenda. There is no hiding it. It's out there. It's just a matter of now being the squeaky wheel. On the World Economic Forum's website, they say, to achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Now is the time for the Great Reset. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism, end quote. Now, our beloved president, in his benevolent wisdom, in case you haven't seen this, has recently come out with a proposal that says if you have good credit, if you've worked hard all your life to establish good, excellent credit, now you're going to be penalized for it. Because the plan is now, if Ken has good credit and I have bad credit, when it comes to our individual mortgages, Ken is going to be assessed anywhere from another $40 to $100 or $200 on his monthly payment to help offset my bad credit. And we're okay with this? Yeah. This is terrible. The World Economic Forum was asked what their predictions were for the world by the year 2030, and one of the answers was, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Well, of course it does. Of course it does. Because why? Because all of this stuff goes back to Marxism. Marxist socialist economy. So to bring equity to the world, rich countries need to part with their wealth so that countries that aren't rich can be propped up and brought out of poverty. And that's exactly what Marx taught, that rich nations and individuals acquire their wealth unjustly on the backs of the poor, on the backs of the disenfranchised, on the backs of those who don't have an opportunity, on the backs of those who are racially and economically segregated, on and on and on and on. So equity requires that everything be rebalanced, there be a reset. So just as white supremacy poses a threat within the U.S., American supremacy poses a threat to the world. So basically, national sovereignty needs to move over and give way to global sovereignty. Not making this stuff up. Right. Yes. Right. And that's true. And Alden is right in the sense that, we know, I mean, Revelation tells us that Satan is going to take over, and there are going to be blind masses that are going to follow this this globalistic front, and that's true. And I just grew up thinking that it was going to be that we were going to be gone before that happened. Okay, pre-tribulational rapture, and I haven't changed my position on that. But what I have come to discover is when Jesus said, "It is not yet the end," that's the time in which we're living. It hasn't got bad enough yet for the church to be raptured. Which makes me think, oh my goodness, if we're still living in the day and age prior to the rapture, before the tribulation, how bad is it going to be then? Oh my, the church will be persecuted. The church is being persecuted now. But we ain't seen anything yet. Now, how's this going to all unfold? Well, first and foremost, it's going to begin with a borderless world. A borderless world. Now, are we seeing that? You bet we are. Globalism requires that we become one big family of nations because borders are obstacles that are standing in the way of the vision of a global society. And despite laws that are approved by our Congress, we as Americans are getting a bird's eye view of what it looks like to have an open border between us and Mexico. And the current administration is incentivizing, they're encouraging people to break the law. They are. Illegal immigrants are given special exemptions. My goodness. I can't go to the restaurant or I can't shop in the paint section of Walmart without proof of my COVID vaccine. But they can enter the country and not be required to be vaccinated? And they can expect all kinds of free goods and services? And they can get excellent health care and education? So the policy has simply become one of catch, release, and reward. It is estimated that about 250,000 of those who have crossed the border escaped capture in the first 6 months of 2021. We are actually paying people to break the law. That's what's happening. You know, at one time, the purpose of immigration in our country was to help protect and preserve the country. We welcomed those who were committed to upholding the laws and the Constitution and our Western values. And now, the needs of the illegals supersedes the needs of those who are legals. Us, the citizens. Unaccompanied children are sold into sexual slavery to pay for their coyotes. They're smugglers. And when they reach the United States, agents who are charged with protecting the border are expected to function as social workers and then take care of them. Border Patrol is not set up to be a social service organization. Sure. And under the disguise of compassion, you have drug smugglers and criminals and gang members free to accompany those who are trying to seek a better life in America. And they come in caravans. And the border policy is no longer pro-American. It is pro-world. People are flying into Central America from all over the world traveling through Mexico, knowing full well that they can just walk across the border. Yep. Yeah. Canada's having real issues now. Yep. Yep. People from more than 100 different countries have been confirmed as coming across the border. So the next move toward a borderless society is to erase the concept of citizenship. The U.S. then becomes a nation that allows all non-citizens to vote. New York Times had an article entitled, "There is no good reason," and stated that a person should not be required to become a citizen in order to vote in U.S. elections. New York City already allows this in their local elections. New York City allows non-citizens to vote in local city elections after the council overwhelmingly approved it in 2021. It is the largest city in the country to allow that right, which is now being enjoyed by over 800,000 legal non-citizen residents. That's close to 1 million votes, folks. Mm-hmm. Are the government leaders who incentivize all this stuff concerned? Well, of course not. Of course not. It's not happening in their neighborhood. You know, they live behind gated walls. They have security details, on and on and on. One of the reasons why I love Governor Abbott from Texas, who sends buses right to the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., and they park out there in front of the Vice President's residence and let them all out. Why not? Power-hungry rulers are never concerned about human suffering when it can be used to expand their voting base. They don't care. What does the Bible say about borders and citizenship? Well, God established borders. God taught His people to respect the borders of neighboring nations. We see that in Deuteronomy 21. We also see in Numbers where there is the description of the Promised Land, and all of the borders of the Promised Land were defined on all 4 points of the compass. When the nation of Edom transgressed Israel's borders, God brought judgment on Edom. I'll read Obadiah, find out all about it. But God also taught His people to distinguish between foreigners who posed a threat and those who didn't. God disrupted the whole idea of globalization, if you remember correctly. We haven't got there yet in our study of Genesis, but we will when we come to the Tower of Babel. That was an attempt at globalization. And God said no. We're going to confuse their languages, and they're going to be divided, and they won't live as one community without borders anymore. And you had countries that were formed with languages and cultures and values and borders. What about citizenship? What does the Bible say about citizenship? Well, the concept, the practice of citizenship goes back to ancient times. Jesus told a parable about a nobleman who left his assets to be taken care of by some of his servants, and we read that his citizens hated him. Paul made very good use of his citizenship, didn't he? He was a Roman citizen. And that citizenship was a big deal. that allowed him to have the right to speak, that allowed him to have the opportunity to travel to Rome and to appeal to Caesar. Kept him from being beaten, too. So citizenship confers certain rights and privileges to those who legitimately reside within a country. But to give the rights and the privileges of citizenship to non-citizens, maybe even those who enter the country while they're breaking our laws, that is not the way forward. That undermines what citizenship is all about. I mean, if that's the case, then why bother even being a citizen? It amazes me, it absolutely amazes me that you have to have a driver's license to buy certain things, to travel, to go certain places, and so on and so forth. But even now, in our great state of Michigan, you no longer need to have a photo ID in order to vote. Governor took care of that in the last election. That's a done deal. Anybody can walk through and vote. You can bus people in off the streets from other states. And they are not required to give you any identification whatsoever. How about money? Have you ever heard of the modern monetary theory, MMT? You've heard of it? It is a stimulus. That's what MMT is. It's a stimulus. The stimulus has to come from an increase in fiscal deficits, which means that public expenditures will go up at a time when tax revenues decline. In other words, more money is going to be spent because of inflation, but tax revenues will decline. And the only way a government can close the gap is by creating more money to cover its deficits. And that's what MMT is all about. So follow the script. We had COVID-19 relief bills that asked for trillions of dollars to be created ex nihilo, out of nothing. Or we could create that money by decree, which means that the Federal Reserve moves decimal points on computers, and it creates trillions of dollars overnight and accelerates inflation. And the government keeps borrowing and borrowing and borrowing more money to keep the government running. It's coming up pretty soon, within the next couple of months. It's going to be a big showdown in the Congress again. Are we going to let the government shut down? Okay, the old debt ceiling. They'll kick the can down the road again. Sure they will. Who wants to be known as the party that closed the government? Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. Right now, America has the privilege of retraining the global currency reserve. But that may very well change because there are global policy makers who have been considering an end to the dominance of the dollar. And they believe that it is because of unsustainable levels of debt that will erode confidence in the dollar. And that will worsen in post-pandemic, post-bailout eras where the rising deficit reaches a threshold beyond which non-U.S. investors are unwilling to fund it. And there are digital currencies that may eventually dethrone the supremacy of the dollar. You've heard of the World Bank. There is a World Bank. The World Bank would then have the opportunity to usurp the wealth of nations and begin to control the economy of the world. All with socialist principles. Your money would no longer be your money. It would be portioned out to you by the World Bank. Now, how do they do that? When the currency is fully digitalized, wealth can then be more equitably distributed and monitored and weaponized against anybody who chooses not to play by the rules. So all of our wealth would ultimately belong to a world bureaucracy that adjusts the economy to maintain equality. And everybody can be given their fair share, and because technology is going to displace a whole lot of jobs, everybody is going to be given a guaranteed basic income. So massively needed wealth will be created digitally. This is already happening in Italy, by the way. Brendan is headed to Italy soon, but he has no idea. You know, it's a great place to visit, but there are people over there that just don't work. And the reason that they don't work is because the government pays them a stipend. They don't have to work. Yeah, yeah. You remember a couple of years ago the big truckers' strike over in Canada, here over by Detroit? There was a decision that the Prime Minister made to exercise emergency powers, and banks were told to freeze the assets of those truckers. And then there was an online account, kind of like a GoFundMe thing, that raised $10 million in donations for those truckers, and that was frozen. When the names of those who contributed to the cause of the truckers were exposed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they were vilified. He who controls the economy controls the world. That lies in our future. How soon, I don't know. But I would say sooner rather than later. How about heightened contact tracing and surveillance? What do I mean by that? Well, climate change. Climate change. When AOC, after she was first elected, and she held a press conference, and she talked about a Green New Deal, and she talked about things that were so bizarre. You know, I shook my head and I said, well, she's a one-termer. Nobody will ever take her seriously. She's lost it. She's out to lunch. It'll never happen. Guess what? It's happening. It's being funded. Climate change may very well be that which is the catalyst to bring these things about. COVID-19 is believed by some to have happened because of our failure to deal with climate change. What does that look like? Well, we invade tropical forests and we disrupt unknown viruses. And the destruction of biodiversity is what causes sources of new viruses to spring up like COVID-19. That's what they believe. So it spawns a new initiative called Planet Health, where studies are done of entire ecosystems, and we need to rethink how we produce energy, and this is going to continue. Responsible leaders will make good use of the pandemic by not letting the crisis go to waste. So this is accomplished by coercion and surveillance and mandated compliance with stiff penalties for those who fail to submit. And those who control the World Bank will use the crisis to enact their global policies. So it wouldn't be hard to enforce. Because if you, for example, because of these things, because of the pandemic, because of the ecology, and because of new viruses coming up, because of the way that we have raped the world in our search for energy, if you fail to get your newest vaccine, well, it's very simple. Those biometrics that I talked about at the beginning, you fail to get your vaccine, or you post something naughty on the internet that doesn't agree, your biometric ID won't even let you into an office building. It'll stop you at the door because it will scan you and it will see whether or not you've been vaccinated. Your bank account becomes unavailable because you haven't complied. In 2017, China authorities began installing surveillance cameras inside and around houses of worship. This has to do with AI. Okay, that's the new big thing going on right now. Okay. Artificial intelligence, AI. This is where it gets really scary. Russ put me on to an edition that was recently shown on 60 Minutes, where they interviewed the head of Google with respect to AI. And even that guy says, this is dangerous. And this is something that if we ever lose control of it, we're done. We're done. How does AI function? How is that possible? I don't claim to be a scientist, but I'll just share what was shared with me. And Russ, you correct me if I'm wrong. AI was invented by a guy who, as a child, was a world chess champion. He sold AI to Google with the proviso that he be given access unlimited access to Google's high-tech laboratories and computers so that he could continue to hone his perfection of AI. And Google said, sure. So one of the first things that he did was he sat down in this room with all these supercomputers and his technology, and he opened a chess game. And he taught the AI to play chess. And within a couple of hours, it was able to play a game of chess. Not real well, but it was able to do that. And then he just kind of left it alone. And the intelligence, in the matter of probably 6 hours, the AI had played millions of games of chess, to the extent that it finally stopped because there were no more games to play. It had, in theory, played every possibility of every move of every game of chess known to man, and some moves and some games that had never been thought of before. And now there's no way you could beat the machine. And because there were no more games to play, it just stopped. You know, supercomputer, super fast, super intelligence. AI is able to do things like facial recognition. The Chinese use facial recognition to unlock their cell phones, to enter office buildings, hotels, schools, planes, trains, taxis. And then the ATMs operated by China Merchant Bank scans your face before it dispenses money. The facial recognition app is so sophisticated that it even compensates for the natural aging process and is able to differentiate between identical twins. That's how good the stuff is. As of 2018, there were 176 million surveillance cameras in China. In 2017, they began to install this stuff around churches. And they installed cameras in the churches by force. And any worshipers or pastors who didn't agree with that happening were taken away to re-education camps. China has been in the process over the last year of assigning every person in the country, get this now, a social credit score. What that means is every person is rewarded when they comply with government and community expectations, and they're penalized when they don't comply. So what is something that would lower your score? Well, saying something unfavorable about the government, or doing something considered socially detrimental, even associating with somebody else who has a negative influence is going to adjust your score downward. So what happens if you have a low score? Well, you're not able to borrow money, you can't rent from somebody, you can't travel, you might not be allowed on a train, you certainly won't be allowed out of the country, and on and on and on and on. And what this does is it allows people to be blacklisted or whitelisted, depending upon whether you comply or you don't comply with the government. If you donate to a government-approved program, your score is going to go up. If your facial recognition software sees you socializing with a friend who might not be so friendly to the government, then your score goes down. So their form of capitalism, if you will, thrives even when the population is manipulated or controlled. You know, in China, in essence has surpassed socialism. They don't even need socialism now because they can control it with AI. They can control it this way. Go ahead. Capitalism, we're all for it. But it's all how you comply with the powers that be and so forth. Vladimir Putin. Well, first of all, Aldous Huxley, well known for a book that he wrote back in the 30s, Brave New World, where that he, in a sci-fi sort of way, talked about this artificial intelligence and psychological manipulation and on and on and on. But Putin said this: artificial intelligence is the future, not only for Russia, but for all humankind. Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world. Do we have AI today? And many of you have Alexa in your home. You ever have Alexa tell you no? It's coming. How many of you ever watched the old 2001 Space Odyssey? Remember HAL? HAL was the supercomputer. And HAL basically said, I don't think that's a good idea, Bob. And there was the problem. And now you have to all go back and watch 2001 Space Odyssey. I'll tell you, oh. So yeah, Alexa. Virtual assistant developed by Amazon. Ask Alexa to give you information to place an order, and she'll do that. She'll play the music you want. She'll order pizza for your party. You don't even need to say please or thank you. But a 6-year-old little girl in Dallas asked Alexa to order a KidCraft Sparkle Mansion dollhouse and a large tin of sugar cookies, and the order arrived at her parents' home, and instead of returning it, they gave the dollhouse to a local hospital because it was a human interest story. It made the news. Get this now. When the story aired on the news show in San Diego, the anchor ended the segment by saying, I love the little girl saying, Alexa, order me a dollhouse. You know what happened? Immediately, Amazon Echo and Alexa devices all over the network, upon hearing that anchor's command to order dollhouses, they all ordered dollhouses. Pepper is an anthropoid made in Japan. It is a companion for children. And it resembles a 7-year-old child and has more emotional intelligence than an average toddler. Uses facial recognition to pick up on sadness or hostility. Voice recognition to hear concern. This is the kind of technology that they're thinking about using in nursing homes to help take care of residents. You know, have a robot take care of grandma. Boy, it'd be a whole lot cheaper. You know, they don't have a family. You don't have to give them a paycheck. This is the scariest part, and this is what really bothers me. Imagine your brain being connected to the internet so that you can sit on a park bench anywhere and mentally surf for any information that you want. Humans whose natural-born abilities have been augmented by superhuman intelligence and machinery will connect to their neocortex, the part of the brain where we do our thinking, and that will be connected to the cloud. So they're working on trying to find ways to connect the human brain directly to a computer and make it possible for you and I to browse the internet with our thoughts rather than our eyes or our fingers or our voices. And then what ends up happening is that we will start to find our spiritual experiences through our interconnections with each other. We don't need a God who sits up there and judges us. We'll take care of that ourselves. And eventually, it will go on to be able to read somebody else's thoughts or exchange your thoughts for their thoughts. Now, here's one of the big fallacies of AI presently. As powerful as this is, as fearful as this is, what makes it even more fearful is that AI is currently unable to differentiate between truth and non-truth. In other words, if AI goes on a search for whatever, it's going to find in a supercomputer fashion, it's going to find and read and digest and take in every bit of information that has ever been gleaned, ever been written on that subject, whether that information is true or not, because it doesn't know how to determine truth from error. But all of that information is going to be used by AI to come up with a solution or an answer to whatever. Crazy. Yep. So then that becomes truth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it the truth? Well, I guess that kind of goes right along with what I said this morning. You know, if you want to redefine marriage, good for you, but that doesn't mean that it's any different than the way God decided it was. So, yeah, all truth is not God's truth, I guess, from that standpoint. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Yes. It is. It is. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. It is. It's overwhelming. Yes. Right. Yep. Yep. Very good point. And I totally agree. And that's a good way to close our time. From the standpoint of, yes, all of these things are so discouraging. They're so discouraging. They're so disheartening. And it's easy for us to say, how can we compete? We might as well just give up. We don't have that option. We don't have that option. We still have a mandate from the Lord. We still have the responsibility to live and to function and to sow the truth, which we know to be the truth, God's truth, as God defines truth. Are we going to be up against a lot? You better believe we are. And Jesus never once told us it was going to be easy, and we already are. It's discouraging when you see so many greats, quote unquote, leaving us to carry on without them. I think of Charles Stanley, who passed away this last week. What a wonderful, wonderful pastor. Great, great man. 90 years old. Prolific author, speaker, twice president of the Southern Baptist Convention when they were ready to go belly up, and he pulled things together, and just amazing. And maybe not so well known, but Ron Hamilton, fantastic musician, famously known for being Patch the Pirate. If you ever ran into any of Patch the Pirate stuff, kids musicals that he wrote for churches. When we were first in ministry, we always did a Patch the Pirate program every year. He wrote the song, God never moves without purpose or plan. Rejoice in the Lord. Just incredible stuff. And he passed away this past week as well. And I look around and I see Swindoll is old, MacArthur is old, David Jeremiah is old, Kennedy left us a decade ago, and where are the ones that are going to stand in the gap? Where are the ones that are going to take the place? Where are the ones? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And what's it going to look like? You feel alone. Our hope is in the Lord. Yes. Yeah. And we do say that. We do say that. And we say, Lord, I hope you come soon, because I am so sick and tired of dealing with this mess. But just like the Apostle Paul said, I am caught in a strait betwixt two. In other words, I'm between a rock and a hard place. Because to depart and to be with the Lord is far greater. But it's necessary for me to remain and to be here with you a while longer. Why? Because there's still work to do. And that's where we find ourselves. We do the work that we can do, and we trust God with the rest. None of this takes God by surprise. None of this takes Him by surprise. And truthfully, if we did the time and had the time and did the research, we would probably find that in every 100 years or so, there's been some new technology along the way that has scared people to death. I remember reading about when radio first came out and radio waves. Pastors were preaching to their congregations, do not get a radio, do not listen to that. That is a tool of the devil. He is the prince of the power of the air. And that stuff is traveling right through the air. And now all we do is push. And now all we do is push send. Right? So it's always going to be something. But be watchful for these things. Be watchful for these things. And know that your redemption draws closer. All right? All right, time for a nap, and then we're coming back for dinner, right? All right, here we go.